Daniel Richmond stood in the long hallway of his mansion, staring at a white door he had not opened in 6 months. His hand shook as he reached for the golden handle. Behind that door was his son, Ethan. His 12-year-old boy who could not walk, could not run, could not play like other children. The boy he had forgotten how to talk to. Daniel was the richest man in the city. He owned hotels, restaurants, and shopping malls. People called him a genius. They said he could turn anything into gold. But when he looked at that white door, he felt like the poorest man alive. He felt empty, cold, afraid. Why was he afraid of a door? Why was he afraid of his own son? 6 months ago, something terrible had happened. Daniel had yelled at Ethan. He had shouted mean words he could never take back. He told his son that he was tired of taking care of him, that Ethan was a burden, a problem. The moment those words left his mouth, Daniel saw something break in his son's eyes. Ethan had looked at him with tears rolling down his cheeks, then turned his wheelchair around and rolled into his room. He locked the door. He had barely spoken to Daniel since that day. Daniel's wife had died when Ethan was born. The doctors said something went wrong during the birth. They saved the baby, but Ethan's legs would never work. Daniel's wife never woke up. In one night, Daniel became a single father with a disabled son and a heart full of pain. At first, Daniel loved Ethan with everything he had. He held him every night. He sang him songs. He promised to always protect him. But as years passed and Daniel's business grew bigger, something changed. He started working more, coming home less. He hired nurses to take care of Ethan. Then he hired teachers to teach him at home. He bought Ethan everything money could buy. Toys, games, computers, books. But he never gave Ethan what the boy needed most. His time, his love, his attention. Now Daniel stood in the hallway, holding a key in his sweating hand. His assistant, Mrs. Chun, had given him the key that morning. She was the kind old woman who brought Ethan his meals 3 times a day. She was the one who talked to him, who made him smile. Mr. Richmond, she had said with worry in her voice. You need to check on Ethan. Something is happening in that room. I hear strange sounds at night. Clicking, tapping. Sometimes music. Sometimes voices. When I bring him food, he hides something under his blanket. He looks scared, like he's doing something wrong. Please, sir, go see your son. Daniel had felt anger rise in his chest. What could Ethan possibly be doing that was wrong? The boy barely left his room. He had no friends, no life outside those 4 walls. But then Daniel felt something else. Guilt. Shame. When was the last time he had actually talked to his son? Really talked to him? When was the last time he asked Ethan how he felt? What he dreamed about? What made him happy? He could not remember. So now here he stood, key in hand, heart pounding like a drum. He knocked on the door first. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. Ethan? Son? It's Dad. Can I come in? Silence. Then he heard something. A quick shuffling sound. Something falling. A gasp. No. Don't come in. Please. Ethan's voice sounded panicked. Desperate. That made Daniel's heart beat even faster. What was his son hiding? Was he in danger? Was someone hurting him through the computer? Daniel had heard scary stories about bad people on the internet who trick children. Ethan, I'm coming in. I'm your father. I need to make sure you're safe. Dad, please. I'm not ready. Just give me 5 more minutes. But Daniel could not wait. The fear was too strong. He pushed the key into the lock and turned it. Click. He opened the door and stepped inside. What he saw made him freeze like a statue. His mouth fell open. His eyes grew wide. His brain could not understand what he was looking at. The room was not what he remembered. It was not the simple bedroom with a bed, a desk, and some toys. It was transformed, completely changed. The walls were covered with papers. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. There were drawings everywhere. Beautiful drawings of cities, of buildings, of bridges, of parks. There were blueprints like the ones architects use. There were designs for wheelchairs that looked like something from the future. There were plans for ramps and elevators and special doors. But that was not the most shocking thing. In the center of the room was Ethan in his wheelchair, surrounded by 3 computer screens. On those screens were websites, professional websites, company websites. And on the biggest screen, Daniel saw something that made his heart stop. He saw plans for a building, a hospital, but not just any hospital. A hospital designed for people like Ethan, people in wheelchairs, people with disabilities. Every entrance was flat. Every room was easy to reach. Every bathroom was perfect for someone who could not walk. And in the corner of the screen, Daniel saw words that made tears fill his eyes. Designed by Ethan Richmond, age 12. Architect of tomorrow. His son. His disabled son. The boy he thought did nothing all day but play games and watch television. The boy he had ignored for 6 months. That boy was an architect. A designer. A genius. Ethan looked at his father with fear and shame on his face. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered. "I know you think I'm useless. I know you're ashamed of me. But this is all I have. This is the only thing I'm good at. Please don't take it away from me. Please." Daniel's legs felt weak. His whole body trembled. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Because at that moment, Daniel Richmond realized something horrible. He had been living in a mansion with a stranger. He had no idea who his own son really was. And now he had to face the biggest question of his life. Could he fix what he had broken? Or was it already too late? Daniel's tears fell like rain. He could not stop them. They rolled down his cheeks and dropped onto the expensive carpet below his feet. He had not cried since the day his wife died. He thought he had no tears left. But seeing his son's work, seeing the fear in Ethan's eyes, broke something deep inside him. Useless? Daniel's voice cracked like broken glass. "You think I believe you're useless?" Ethan looked down at his hands. His fingers were covered with pencil marks and paint stains. "You said I was a burden. You said taking care of me was too hard. You stopped coming to see me. You stopped eating dinner with me. You forgot my birthday." His voice became smaller with each word. "If I'm not a burden, then why did you leave me alone?" Those words hit Daniel harder than any punch ever could. He stumbled backward and sat on Ethan's bed. His son was right. He had forgotten Ethan's birthday. It was 3 months ago. Daniel had been in another city, signing papers for a new hotel. He did not even call. Mrs. Chun had baked a small cake and sang to Ethan alone in this room. Daniel only found out a week later when he saw the leftover cake in the kitchen. Daniel Richmond stood in the long hallway of his mansion. "I was so staring at a white door. But Ethan, he had not opened in 6 months. I never thought you were useless." His hand shook as he reached for the golden handle. Behind that door was his son, Ethan. Ethan looked up. His 12-year-old boy who could not walk, could not run, what do you mean? Could not play like other children. Daniel took a deep breath. The boy he had forgotten how to talk to. He had never told anyone this truth before. He owned hotels, mother died, and restaurants and shopping malls. The doctors told me your legs would never work. Genius. I felt like it was my fault. He could turn anything into gold. Like I had broken you somehow. But when he looked at that white door, every time I looked at you, he felt like my poorest man alive. Not yours. He felt empty. Mine. Cold. I could build 100 hotels. Why was he afraid of my own son? Why was he afraid of his own son? I could not bring your mother back. Something terrible had happened. I buried myself in work because work was something I could control. He could never take back. Something I could fix. He told his son that he was tired of taking care of him. I did not know how to help you. That Ethan was a burden. I avoided you instead. A problem. And the moment those makes words me the worst father in the whole world. Daniel saw something break. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. Ethan had looked at him with tears rolling down his cheeks. "I'm not broken." Then turned his wheelchair around. "I just need different things than other kids." He locked the door. "I needed you to see me." He had barely spoken to Daniel since that day. To care about what Daniel's wife had died when Daniel looked around the room again. The doctor said something went wrong during the birth. He stood up and walked to the walls. They saved the baby, but he studied the drawings never work. Daniel's not just wife good. Never woke up. They were incredible. In one night, buildings that Daniel became a single father with a disabled son, parks with smooth paths perfect for wheelchairs. At first, playgrounds Daniel loved each child, no matter what their body could do. He held him, could play every night. He sang him with classrooms that welcomed everyone. To always protect each him. Design was but smart as years and beautiful, and Daniel's business grew bigger. How long have you been doing this? Something changed. Daniel started working more. 2 years. Coming home less. Ethan said. He hired nurses to notice I was good at drawing. Then he hired teachers to teach him at home. I taught myself everything money could buy. I watched videos.
games.
I read everything I could
computers,
find.
Books.
Then I started
But he never
designing
gave
things.
Ethan what the boy
At
needed
first,
most.
just for fun.
His time.
But then I
His
realized
love.
something. His attention.
Most buildings in the
Now
world
Daniel
are
stood
not
in the
made
hallway,
for people like
holding
me.
a key
We
in
get
his sweating
forgotten.
hand. So
His assistant,
I decided
Mrs.
I
Chen,
would design
had given him
buildings
the
that
key
remember
that
us.
morning.
Buildings
She was
that
the
say,
kind old woman
"You
who
belong
brought
here
Ethan
too."
his meals 3
Daniel
times
felt
a
his
day.
heart breaking.
She was
and
the one
healing
who
at
talked
the
to
same
him,
time,
who made him
His
smile.
son had been alone,
Mr. Richmond,
teaching himself.
she had said
creating
with worry
art
in her voice,
and dreaming
"You need
of
to
a
check
better
on Ethan."
world. All
Something
while
is
Daniel was
happening
in his
in that
office
room.
counting money
I hear
and making
strange
deals
sounds
that
at
meant
night.
nothing.
Clicking.
Ethan,
Tapping.
these designs are
Sometimes
amazing.
music.
Have you shown them to
Sometimes
anyone?
voices.
Ethan shook
When
his
I
head
bring him
quickly.
food, who would
He
care?
hides something
I'm
under
just
his
a kid
blanket.
in a wheelchair.
He looks scared.
Nobody
like
listens
he's
to
doing
kids.
something wrong.
Especially
Please,
not kids
sir.
like me.
Go see
Daniel
your son.
walked to the computer
Daniel had
and
felt
looked at the
anger
hospital
rise
design
in
more
his
carefully.
chest.
What
He
could
had built
Ethan
5
possibly
hospitals
be
in his
doing that was
career.
wrong?
He had
The boy
hired
barely
the best
left his
architects
room.
in the world.
He had no
But
friends.
none of them had
no
thought
life
about
outside those
accessibility
4 walls
like this.
But then
None of them
Daniel
had
felt
designed
something
with
else.
such care
Guilt.
for people who
Shame.
needed extra help.
When was the last time
I know
he had
someone who would
actually
listen,
talked to
Daniel
his son?
said.
Really
Actually,
talked to
I
him?
know many people.
When was the last time
Ethan,
he asked
I build
Ethan
buildings
how he
for a
felt?
living.
What he
I
dreamed
have
about?
architects and
What made him
engineers
happy?
who work for me.
He could not
What if
remember.
I showed them your work?
So now here
Ethan's
he stood,
face turned
key
white.
in hand,
No.
heart pounding
Dad,
like a
please
drum.
don't.
He knocked
They'll
on
laugh
the door
at me.
first. They'll
No
say
answer.
a kid can't
He
design
knocked
real
again.
buildings.
Harder this time.
They'll say I'm
Ethan?
stupid.
Son,
is that what you think?
It's Dad.
That people
Can
will
I
laugh
come
at you?
in?
Daniel asked
Silence.
gently. Then
That's
he heard
what always
something.
happens.
A quick
Ethan
shuffling
said,
sound, and his voice
Something
was full
falling.
of old pain.
A gasp.
Remember when I was
No.
8? Don't come in.
I
told you I wanted to be an
Please.
architect when
Ethan's
I grew up.
voice sounded
You
panicked.
laughed.
Desperate.
You said I should focus
That
on
made
things
Daniel's
I could
heart
actually
beat
do.
even faster.
You said dreaming
What
too
was his
big
son
would
hiding?
only hurt me. Was he in danger?
Daniel felt
Was
like
someone
someone
had
him
stabbed
through
him in the
computer?
chest. Daniel had heard
remembered that
scary
day.
stories about
He
bad
remembered
people on
laughing.
the internet who
He
tricked
thought he
children.
was protecting
Ethan
Ethan from
I'm coming in.
disappointment.
I'm your
He
father.
thought he was being
I need to make
realistic.
sure you're safe.
But he had killed
Dad,
his son's
please.
dream instead.
I'm not ready.
Or at least tried
Just give
to.
me 5
But
more minutes.
Ethan had kept dreaming
But Daniel
anyway.
could not wait.
He had just stopped
The fear
sharing
was
his
too
dreams with his
strong.
father. He
I
pushed
was
the
wrong
key
that
into
day
the
too,
lock and turned
Daniel
it.
said.
Click.
I have been
He
wrong
opened
about
the door
so many
and
things.
stepped inside.
But Ethan,
What he saw made
I'm
him
looking at your
freeze
work
like
right
a
now,
statue.
and I can
His
promise
mouth
you
fell
something.
open.
These
His
designs
eyes grew
are
wide.
professional. His
They're
brain
brilliant.
could not understand
Any
what he was
architect
looking
would be
at.
proud to
The
create
room was
something
not
like
what
this.
he remembered. The
It
fact
was
that
not
you're
the
12
simple
makes it
bedroom with
even
a
more
bed,
amazing.
a desk, and
Ethan
some
looked at his
toys.
father with hope
It was
and doubt
transformed.
fighting in his eyes.
Completely changed.
Really?
You're
The
not
walls
just
were
saying that to
covered
make
with
me feel
papers.
better?
Hundreds
I
of
never
them.
just say things.
Maybe thousands.
Daniel replied.
There were drawings
You know that
everywhere.
about me. Beautiful
I'm a
drawings of
businessman,
cities.
of
I only deal
buildings,
with
of
facts
bridges,
and money
of parks.
and results. There were
And the
blueprints
fact
like
is,
the ones
your work is
architects
valuable.
use. There were
Very
designs
valuable.
for wheelchairs that
Then
looked like
Daniel's
something
phone
from
rang.
the future. He
There
looked
were
at the
plans
screen
for ramps
and
and
his face
elevators
changed.
and special doors.
It showed a name that
But
made
that
his
was
stomach
not
drop.
the most shocking thing.
Richard Cole.
In the center
The
of the
head
room
of the
was
city
Ethan
planning
in his
committee.
wheelchair,
The man
surrounded
who controlled
by
which
3
buildings got
computer
built in the
screens.
city
On
and
those
which ones
screens
did
were
not.
websites.
Daniel had been trying to get
Professional
approval for a
websites.
new shopping
Company
mall for
websites.
6 months.
And
Richard
on the
kept
biggest
saying
screen,
no.
Daniel
He said
saw
Daniel
something that
only
made his
cared
heart
about
stop.
money, not about
He saw
people.
plans for a building.
He said Daniel's
A
buildings were
hospital,
cold,
but not
and
just any
unfriendly.
hospital.
He said
A
the city
hospital
needed
designed
builders with
for
heart,
people like Ethan,
not just wallets.
people in wheelchairs.
An idea exploded
people
in
with
Daniel's
disabilities.
mind.
Every
Crazy,
entrance was
impossible.
flat.
Every room
Terrifying
was
idea.
easy to reach.
He looked at his son.
Every bathroom was
Then he looked
perfect
at the
for someone
hospital
who could
design
not
on the
walk.
screen.
And
Then
in the
he
corner
looked
of
at
his
his
phone,
phone.
Daniel
Ethan,
saw words
Daniel
that
said
made tears
slowly.
fill his eyes.
What if I told you that
Designed
tomorrow,
by Ethan Richmond,
you and I are
age
going
12,
to meet with the most
architect
important man
of
in the
tomorrow,
city.
and
His
we're
son,
going to show him your
his
hospital
disabled
design.
son.
And
The
if he
boy
likes
he thought
it,
did
we're
nothing
going to
all
build
day,
it together, but play
a
games
real
and watch
hospital
television with your name
The
on
boy
it.
he had ignored
Would you
for
want to
6
do
months.
that?
Ethan's
That boy
mouth
was an
opened,
architect, but no
a
sound
designer,
came out.
a
He
genius.
looked terrified
Ethan
and
looked at his
excited
father
at the
with
same time.
fear and
But there's a
shame on his
problem,
face.
Daniel
I'm
continued.
sorry, Dad,
If
he
we do
whispered.
this,
I know
can't
you think
protect
I'm
you
useless.
anymore.
I
People
know
will
you're
know who
ashamed
you
of me.
are.
But
Some
this is
people
all I
might be
have.
mean.
This is
Some
the
might
only
not
thing I'm
believe a
good
kid
at.
designed it.
Please don't
Some
take
might
it away
try to
from
take
me.
credit for your work.
Please.
Are you brave
Daniel's
enough
legs
to face
felt
that?
weak.
Are you
His
ready
whole
to show
body
the world
trembled.
who you
He
really
opened
are?
his mouth to speak.
This was
But
the moment.
no words
The
came
big
out.
choice.
Because at that
Ethan
moment,
could stay safe
Daniel
and hidden in his
Richmond
room,
realized something
or he could step
horrible.
out into the light.
He had been
and
living
risk
in a mansion
everything.
with a stranger.
Ethan looked at his
He had
drawings
no
on the
idea
walls.
who his own son
He looked
really
at his
was.
computer screens,
And now he
then
had to
he looked
face
at his
the biggest
father.
question of his
And
life.
for the first time
Could
in
he
6
fix
months,
what he had broken?
smiled.
Or
I'm ready,
was it already
Dad.
too late?
Let's build
Daniel's
something
tears fell like
amazing
rain.
together. He could
But
not
what
stop
Daniel
them.
and Ethan
They
did not
rolled
know
down
was
his
that
cheeks
Richard
and
Cole
dropped
was
onto
not
the
just the
expensive
head
carpet
of the
below
city
his feet.
planning committee.
He had not
He was
cried
also
since
the
the day his
cruelest
wife
man in
died.
the city. He thought
He
he had no
destroyed
tears
people who
left.
challenged him.
But seeing his
And
son's work,
he had a
seeing
special
the
hatred
fear
for the
in
Richmond
Ethan's
family.
eyes, broke
Because
something
15 years
deep
ago,
inside him.
Daniel had taken
Useless.
something very
Daniel's
precious from
voice
Richard,
cracked like broken
and Richard
glass.
had been waiting
You
all this
think I
time for
believe you're
revenge.
useless?
Tomorrow's
Ethan
meeting
looked
would
down
not
at
be
his
about
hands.
building a hospital.
His fingers were
It would be a
covered
trap.
with pencil marks,
And Daniel was
paint
about to walk
stains.
his disabled
You
son
said I was a
straight
burden.
into it. You said taking care of me was too hard. You stopped coming to see me. You stopped eating dinner with me. You forgot my birthday. His voice became smaller with each word. If I'm not a burden, then why did you leave me alone? Those words hit Daniel harder than any punch ever could. He stumbled backward and sat on Ethan's bed. His son was right. He had forgotten Ethan's birthday. It was 3 months ago. Daniel had been in another city, signing papers for a new hotel. He did not even call. Mrs. Chun had baked a small cake and sang to Ethan alone in this room. Daniel only found out a week later when he saw the leftover cake in the kitchen.
I was
Daniel
wrong.
Rich meeting room in
Daniel
the long
whispered
hallway
and
of his
gray.
mansion.
I was so
20 people
staring
sat
at a
around
white door.
a long
Ethan
table
did not
was
open
made
me
of dark
in
wood.
6
I
months.
never
They
thought
were
you were
all
useless. His
adults
hand
and
shook as he
expensive.
reached
I
for
was
the golden
useless.
handle.
Important people
I
who
thought
made
that
important
failed his
decisions.
son, Ethan.
And
Ethan
at the
looked
end
up.
of the
12-year-old
table
boy
sat
could not
Richard
walk,
could not
smiling
run.
like
What
a
do you
woman.
mean?
Play like
Daniel
a
took a
child,
deep breath.
The boy he had
This
forgotten
Daniel
how to
pushed
talk to.
Ethan's
He
wheelchair.
had
Daniel
never
was the
told
richest
anyone
man
he felt
in
his
the
son's
city.
body
He
go
owned
when your mother
hotels,
died and you were
restaurants,
born
and
and
shopping
shopping
malls.
malls.
Doctors
Ethan
told
had
me
been
your
around
legs
with
would
so
never
many
work.
strangers in
Genius.
years.
I felt like
They
it was
said
Daniel
he
put his
could
hand
turn
on
anything
me
like
to
I
his
had
shoulder
broken you so.
and
But when he looked at that
every
white
time I
door,
looked at
we
you,
can do this
I
together.
saw
Like
my
that
victorious
failure
man
said,
alive.
not
I'm
yours.
here with
He felt
you.
empty.
Mine. Cold.
I could
Daniel
build
Richmond
100
afraid.
hotels.
Richard
Why
said
was
he
he
could
not
not
afraid
fix
of his
my
own
own
son?
son.
Why
But
was he
felt
not
like
afraid of
he
his own
walked.
son?
And
I could not
6
bring
months
this young
ago,
man something
so
so
I ran
small.
away,
Happened.
Ethan.
I
Daniel
buried
himself
myself
said
work
proudly.
because
He
work
had
was
something
something
I
I
told
told
you
you
could
could
never
never
take
take
back.
something I
The
could
room
fix. He told his son that
exploded
you
with
tired of
I did not
people
know
looked
how
at
to
each
help
other
you.
that
With
Ethan
so
was a burden. I avoided you
a
instead.
problem.
One woman
And
the moment
that
those
is why the
words
word
father
father
hovering
in
her
the whole
mouth.
world.
Daniel saw
Richard's
something
smile
Ethan's
grew bigger
eyes
and
filled
meaner.
with tears.
Your
Ethan had
son
looked at him
died.
with
I never
tears
needed you
rolling
to
down
fix
his
me.
cheeks.
I'm
Daniel
not
then
broken.
turned his
When you
wheelchair
said he
around.
just knew
New
architects
architects
with
with
fresh
fresh
ideas.
ideas. He locked
I
the door.
needed you to see
He had barely
To
spoken
talk
to
to
Daniel
child,
since
to
that day.
care
Certainly
about what
Daniel's
a
wife
disabled
had
child
died.
when
Daniel
with
looked around the
crayons.
room again. The doctor
Really
said
words
something
hit
like
like
wrong during
stones.
the
He
birth.
stood up
Ethan's
and
hands
saved
gripped
the
his
baby.
wheelchair, but
He
Ethan's
studied
legs
drawing
would
never
muscles
work.
turned white.
Daniel
Daniel
just
felt
felt
rage
never
burn
won
in
his
his
chest.
incredible.
In one
He wanted
night,
to grab
buildings
Richard
that
Daniel
and
became
became
a
her
window
window
father with a
ways. But he
disabled
remembered
son
what he
with
told
smooth
paths
paths
perfect
for
people
people
would be
mean.
At
First,
first,
had to be
Daniel
strong
loved
together.
child.
Every
No matter
son
what
is
his
more
body could
professional
do.
He held him
anyone
every
every
together.
night.
Daniel
Daniel
said
said
in
in
a
a
voice
voice
that
that
made
he
well
promised
people
to
always
always
protect
each
him.
design was
but as
smart,
years
he
passed,
beautiful, and
Daniel's
kind.
business
I will
grew
take
bigger.
my
How long have
business
you been
by
doing
money,
this? Changed,
and
Daniel
my
started
projects
working
are
more.
city.
2
Your
years.
choice,
Ethan
Richard.
said.
He hired
Richard
nurses to
noticed
take care
I
of
was
you.
good at drawing.
Daniel
Then he
Richmond
hired
bought me
teachers
books
the
about
richest man in the
architecture.
city.
He
I
bought
taught
Ethan
myself
everything
being
money
a
could
master.
buy. I watched
Coins,
videos. Richard
games,
said
read
coldly.
everything I could
Let's see
find.
what the child
Then
has made.
I started
But he never
designing
gave
to be
Ethan what the boy
entertaining.
needed
At first,
most.
just
Ethan
for
looked
fun.
up at his
This
father
But then
with
I
his
realized
terrified
something.
eyes.
His attention
Most
Daniel
buildings
knelt
in the
down
world
beside
Daniel
the
stood
real
in
hallway
hallway
and whispered,
holding a key
Remember what I
against
told you
forgotten
last
hand.
night? So
His
your work
assistant
I
speaks
decided
for
I
itself.
would design
Had given
buildings
him
for
the
them
key
your
that
hearts.
morning.
I
Building
believe
she
in
was
you.
the kind old woman
You
who
belong
brought
here
words into
too.
Ethan's strength.
Daniel
times
felt
a
his
day.
heart
Rolled his
breaking
wheelchair
and
to one
feeling
front of the
at the
room
same
where a
time.
big
Made
screen
him
was. His
smile.
son had been
Mrs.
alone.
Chun
Had
had
helped
teaching
him put his
himself.
designs
She had
into
said
a
presentation
presentation
that
that
morning.
and dreaming
You need
of
to
a
get
better
also
world.
whispered something
All while
as
Daniel
happy
was
as
not
an
understood
apple
counting
until
money.
now.
I hear
and
strange
strange
deals
sounds
that
that
meant
little
nothing.
one.
Clicking.
Your gift
Ethan,
will
shine
shine
brighter
designs
than
are
their
amazing.
amazing. Music.
Ethan
Have you
pressed the
shown
button
them
on
tiny
his laptop.
voices?
Ethan
This
shook
when
his
I
head
bring him
ugly.
food
And
who would
everyone
hide
gasped.
something
I'm
under
just
his
a
blanket?
kid in a
image
wheelchair.
showed
Looked
a
scared.
beautiful
Nobody
building
listens
made
to
of
doing
glass
something
and
wrong.
light, especially not
Please
curved
hit
like a
me.
rainbow.
Go
And
stand
Daniel
smart
sparkled
to
like a
computer
Daniel had
man looked at the
what made it
hospital
special
design
was
more
not
carefully.
how it looked.
What
He
could
had built
even
5
how it worked
hospitals
be
in his
doing that was
every
wrong.
entrance had
He had
the boy
hired
barely
the best
left his
architects
every
in the world.
elevator
He had no
was extra
friends. None of them
wide.
had
no
thought
life
about
every
outside
bathroom
of
was
this
designed
like
for
this.
people who
But
needed
then
help.
none of them
Daniel
had
felt
designed
guilty
said
of
to
such
everyone
care.
who
Guilt
saw it
for people who
you are
needed
welcome
extra
here
help.
no
When was the
matter
last
what
time
time. I know
he
someone
had
who would
actually
listen.
talked
This
to
is
his
Hope
son?
Hospital.
Really
Actually,
talked to
I
his
know
son.
many people.
When
His
was the
voice
last
was
time
shaky
he
at first.
asked
I build
Ethan how
buildings
he
for a
grew
living.
stronger
What he
with I
dreamed
have
about.
architects and
What made him
engineers
happy
who work
everyone.
for me.
He
but
could not
especially
remember
showed
people
them your
like
work.
me
So
who
now
use
here he
wheelchairs.
stood. Face turned white.
Most hospitals are
scary
pounding
like
like
hard
please
to move
don't.
around.
He knocked
they'll
on the
laugh
door
at me.
first.
They'll
I know
say
because
kid
I've been to
can't
50
design
real
buildings
buildings
in my life.
part of this time.
They'll
Every
say I'm
single
stupid.
one made me
Son,
feel
feel
like I
it's
didn't
dad.
belong.
That people
Can
will
I
allow
come
the
in?
problem they had
Daniel
to solve.
asked gently.
This hospital
Then that's
is
what
different.
always happens.
It
A
makes
quick
people
shutdown
feel
sound,
safe
and his
valued.
voice
Something
was full
full
of old
He
pain.
clicked to the next
Remember
line.
when I was
No.
8?
It showed
Don't
the
come
inside
told
of
you
the
I wanted to be
hospitals.
an architect
Rooms
when I grew
filled
up.
with
Sounded
you
great.
laughed. Garden
Desperate
said I should
patient
focus
that
on
made
things
Daniel's
outside.
actually do.
Play areas
said
where
dreaming
sick
children
children
in
in
wheelchairs
wheelchairs
could
could
still
me.
have fun.
Was he in danger?
Daniel
Always
felt
felt
like
someone
someone
hurting
had
him
stabbed him in
wheelchairs
the
do
chest
this
easily.
Daniel had
He remembered
heard signs
scary
that were
stories
easy
about
to
bad
remember
people on the
colors
internet.
that made
He
tricky
thought
children.
he was protecting
Ethan
Ethan
from
from
scary
coming in.
appointment.
Every
I'm
part
in
of
thought
this
he was
building
being
thinks
I
about
need to
what
make sure you're
patients
safe.
need.
But he had killed
Dad,
his son's
please.
dream instead.
Not
I'm
just
not ready.
medicine.
Or at least try
Just
not
give
just
me 5
doctors.
more
But
minutes.
Ethan had
But
kept
dreaming
dreaming. Daniel
anyway.
could not
Comfort.
wait. He had just stopped
Fear
sharing
was
his dreams
that's
with
why
his
I
father.
called it hope.
I was wrong that day too. The room was
Daniel
completely
said.
silent.
I have been
He
wrong
opened
about
the door
so
and
many
screamed
things
with
inside.
wide eyes.
But Ethan,
When he saw
some
me,
people
looking
had
at your work
tears
right
on
now,
their cheeks.
and I can
His
promise
mouth
you
woman
felt
who had
open.
laughed earlier
These
eyes
designs
grew
are
wide.
professional.
His
But
brain
really
cold
not
was
understand
Daniel
any
was
architect
looking
would be
at,
proud
or at
to
least
the room was
something
not what
intended
he
not to
remembered.
be. The fact
It was
that
a
your
pretty
12
simple
makes
bedroom
Richard
with
said
more
had
poison in
a
his
desk
voice.
and
Ethan
some
looked at his
pretty
father
pictures
with
don't
hope
make
and
real
transformed.
buildings.
Fighting in his eyes.
Tell me,
Completely
child,
changed.
do you know anything
You're
about
not just
low
saying
covered
that to make
walls?
me feel better
About plumbing
Hundreds
systems?
I never just say
about
things electrical
thousands.
codes.
Daniel replied.
There were
About
drawings,
the you know that
technical
about me.
details.
Beautiful
I'm a
drawings
great
of cities.
fantasy from
I
reality.
only deal with
Buildings,
bridges.
did
Money,
Daddy
farm
draw
results.
all of this
There
for
were
you? And the
blueprints
fact
is
is,
the ones
your
our
work is
architects
valuable.
use. But instead
There
of
were
designs
designs
for
for
running away,
wheelchairs that
then
looked like
Daniel's
something
amazing
from the
happened.
future.
He
There
got
were
plans
plans
for
ramps
good
and
elevators
elevators
and
brave
special doors.
and showed a name that made
that
his
was
stomach
beneath
drop.
the most
Shocking.
structural
Richard
support
Cole,
system.
in the center of
The
the
head
room
of the
was
city
Ethan
planning
and
committee
clicking
chair.
rapidly.
The man
surrounded by
controlled which
three
buildings got
computers
built in the
23
city.
covers
On
and
those
plumbing
screens
layout
were
were
accessible
websites. Daniel had been trying to get approval for a new shopping
company
mall, the
website.
electrical grid design,
And Richard
on the biggest
said
screen
no.
equipment plus
Daniel
backup
said Daniel
something that
only
made his
cared
heart
about
stop.
money,
42
not about
explains how
the
the building
building
needs.
needs
He said
every
Daniel's
single
buildings
hospital.
were cold,
But
plus
not
extra
under
codes. I
hospital.
added
He
myself.
said the city needed builders with
for
heart.
people like
Would you like
not
me to
just
explain
the
the
mathematical
an idea
calculations for the
exploded
people
in
with
Daniel's
disabilities,
mind.
or perhaps the
Every
ventilation
entrance
system
was
that prevents
possible.
infections.
Every room
Terrifying
was
idea.
easy
I can
to
do
reach.
that. He looked at his
Every
science
bathroom
bathroom.
was
Then he looked at
perfect
learning
someone
everything I
design
needed to
screen.
know.
And
then
in the
he
corner
looked
of
at
his
his face
screen,
turned purple.
Ethan
Daniel saw
he
where
opened
Daniel
his
said
mouth
tears,
slowly.
no words.
Eyes
What if
came
I
out.
told you
Designed
that
by
tomorrow
Ethan
had just
Richmond,
you and I are
he was
going to
not
meet
playing
with
with
the
the
most
most
architect
important man
of
of
tomorrow. He was a
tomorrow.
real
And
architect.
we're going to
with
show
real
him his
knowledge
disabled
and real
son.
skill.
And
The
if he
boy
likes
he thought
something
did not expect to
together,
happen, but played
an
games
old
with
man
hospital
at the
television
table
with
stood
your
up.
name
The
on
boy
it.
he had
His name
ignored
was
you wanted
Dr.
to do that.
Martinez.
Ethan's
That
mom,
was
though,
an
he was the
architect,
director
but
of
no
the
designer.
city's
Oldest hospital.
A
He looked
genius.
terrified
Ethan
and
looked at his
excited
father
at the
with
same time.
fear and
But there's a
shame on his
problem.
face.
Daniel
I'm
continued.
sorry, Dad,
If
he
we do
whispered.
this,
I
I
know
can't
you think
protect
I'm
you
useless.
anymore.
I
People
know
will
you're
know who
ashamed
you
of me.
are.
But
Some
this is
people
all I
might be
have.
mean.
This is
Some
the
might
only
not
thing I'm
believe a
good
kid
at.
designed it. Please don't
Some
take
might
it away
try to
from
take
me.
credit for your work.
Please. Are you brave
Daniel's
enough
legs
to face
felt
that?
weak.
Are you
His
ready to
whole
show
body
the world
trembled.
who you
He
really
opened
are?
his mouth to speak.
This was
But
the moment.
no words came
the big
out.
choice.
Because at that
Ethan
moment,
could stay safe.
Daniel
and hidden in his
Richmond
room,
realized something
or he could step
horrible.
out into the light.
He had been
and
living
risk
in a mansion
everything.
with a stranger.
Ethan looked at his
He had
drawings
no
on the
idea
walls.
who his own son
He looked
really
at his
was.
computer screens,
And now he
then
had to
he looked
face
at
the
his
biggest
father.
question of his
and
life.
for the first time
Could
in
he
6
fix
months,
what he had broken?
smiled. Or
I'm ready,
was it already
Dad.
too late?
Let's build
Daniel's
something
tears fell
amazing
like
together.
rain. He could
But
not
what
stop
Daniel
them.
and Ethan
They
did not
rolled
know
down
was
his
that
cheeks
Richard
and
Cole
dropped
was
onto
not
the
just the
expensive
head
carpet
of the
below
city
his
planning
feet.
committee.
He had not
He was
cried
also
since
the
the day his
cruelest
wife
man in the
died.
city.
He thought
He
he had no
destroyed
tears
people who
left.
challenged him.
But seeing his
And
son's work,
he had a
seeing
special
the
hatred
fear
for the
in
Richmond
Ethan's
family.
eyes,
Broke
because
something
15 years
deep
ago,
inside him.
Daniel had taken
Useless.
something very
Daniel's
precious from
voice
Richard,
cracked like broken
and Richard
glass.
had been waiting
You
all this
think
time
I
for
believe you're
revenge.
useless?
Tomorrow's
Ethan
meeting
looked
would
down
not
at his
be about
hands.
building a hospital.
His fingers were
It would be a
covered
trap.
with pencil marks,
and Daniel was
paint
about to walk
stains.
his disabled
You
son
said I was a
straight
burden.
into it. You said taking care of me was too hard. You stopped coming to see me. You stopped eating dinner with me. You forgot my birthday. His voice became smaller with each word. If I'm not a burden, then why did you leave me alone? Those words hit Daniel harder than any
any punch ever could. He stumbled backward and sat on Ethan's bed. His son was right. He had forgotten Ethan's birthday. It was 3 months ago. Daniel had been in another city, signing papers for a new hotel. He did not even call. Mrs. Chun had baked a small cake and sang to Ethan alone in this room. Daniel only found out a week later when he saw the leftover cake in the kitchen.
I was in
Downstairs
Mom's
meeting
stood
room,
in
Dr.
Daniel's
Martinez
hallway of his
I was
mansion.
so
20
staring at a
my
white
daughter
door.
used
His
to
sleep
live
was
with
made
me.
of dark wood.
She had a
never
car
thought
accident
all
5
his
years
hands
ago.
shook as he
Ever
reached
since
for the
then,
golden
important
handle.
people
I
have
watched
tried
the
to
fine
avoid
buildings
this
that
that
were
were
not made for
and
her.
at the end of the table,
including my own
fusion
house
hall
space.
could not
I
violate
felt
what
like
she
not
needed.
play like
Daniel
Tuesday,
took a
knowing
deep
that the
breath.
place
The
I
boy
worked
he had
for
forgotten
got
how
hard
to
to
drive
Ethan's
instead of
wheelchair.
Ethan
Daniel
never
was told
told
which
anyone
man
besides
his
his
son's
son's
body.
body.
He owned
When your mother
hotels,
died and
restaurants,
you forget, this
and
was the
shopping
first
malls.
dream
told me
had
to
been
live
aroused
everything
in
I
memory.
wished someone
I
would
felt like
create.
it was
Daniel
when
put his
he
hand on
everything like I had broken you so
but when he looked at
every time I looked at you,
do this
I
together
felt like
because
this
is
is
what
what
healing
healing
is. I'm here with you.
felt empty.
More people
I
stood up.
could build
100
cities had
Richard
said
said
he
he
could
could
not
not
fix
fix
a famous
famous
architect.
Why was
I
he
could not
afraid
be
of
a
his
business
own
owner.
and
I could not
6
bring
months
this
ago,
young man.
one
Something
by
so
one,
ran away.
son stood and
Daniel
applauded
had yelled
himself
words
sound
because
the
he
room
had
was
shouted
shouting
the word
I told you
to
Richard
never take
told
back.
something out of
The
him.
room
He told his son that he was tired of
I did not
people
know
looked at
his
each
cruelty
other
had
with
backed
so
his
I avoided
and
you
now
in problem.
one woman
The moment
that
that
her
father
father
was
father
covering
and
her mouth,
Daniel
walked
saw
Richard's
Richard's
smile
smile
and
eyes
eyes
filled
filled
with
with
tears.
Your
I
son
looked
said,
at him
I
and
never
tears
treated you
rolling
with
down
girly.
his cheeks.
Not
Daniel
because
had
you're
turned his
impressed,
wheelchair
he just
around,
need
but
different
because
things.
his ideas, he locked
I
on
needed
Daniel
you
was
to
real
be
He had
scary.
barely
To
spoken
talk
to
to
Daniel
real
since that
courage.
day.
Care about
Certainly
what I
Daniel's
did.
wife
Ethan
had
hugged
died.
his father
Daniel
for
looked
the
around
first
the
time
room.
in
The
6
doctor
months.
the words hit
Something
like
and
wrong
bombs.
He stood up, all the
Ethan's
hands
hand
stayed
stayed
at his
loneliness,
wheelchair,
but
he
anger
studied
melted
typewriting
away,
never
never
worked.
worked.
Daniel
Not
not
3
3
months
months
later,
later,
they were
construction began
He
on
wanted
the
buildings
property.
that Daniel
And
became
Daniel
visited
visited
father
father
sites,
but
every
every
summer
with
with
smooth
and
paths
heart
for
for
people
people
with
matching
matching
hard
hard
hats.
hats. Playgrounds, Daniel loved
every
each
child,
child together.
every matter with
They
their
made
decisions
decisions
as
as
anyone
anyone
every
together.
night.
The workers
Daniel
sang
said
songs
in
in
classrooms
voice
that
that
made
welcomed
welcomed
them
them
to always
junior
protect
each
and
design,
annual
but as
listening
years
years
passed,
every
every Daniel's
or
business
I will
grew
take my
bigger,
business
something
something
money
changed.
and
Daniel
Rebecca
started
saw
working.
that
Daniel had
2
learned
years
what really
really
mattered.
mattered.
said.
He
Every
hired
night
Richard
to
to
notice
notice
time
time
for
for
dinner.
dinner drawing.
Daniel
Daniel
retired
retired
and
and
talked
talked
about
about
richest
dreams
man
and
and
ideas.
I
Taught
taught
him
myself
everything
being
money
a
learned that
guy.
his son
I watched
watched
spicy food.
Richard
I
said
read
coldly.
everything I could
Let's see what the child
then
made.
I started
He learned
learning
that
Ethan
Ethan
was
was
thin
brave
what the boy
and
needed
first
most.
just
Ethan
for
looked
fun
up
to
at his
his
father,
but then I
with terrified
realized that
eyes.
having a
His
son
attention
Daniel
still
built
built
now
narrow
Daniel
down
stood
around
there
him.
and was
It was
holding
a
a
gift.
key. Remember what I
Guess
told you
what?
last
Ethan
night?
saw the world's
your
distance
work
speaks
decided
for
and
itself.
that different
I
view
gave
to
him
show them
every
being
heart
more beautiful.
I
Building
believe
on
in
the
the
day
kind
old
woman.
woman
Those
who
words gave
a
me
golden
Ethan's
strength.
strength. Daniel felt his
He
heart
rolled
break.
his wheelchair
the one
to
linked
his
room
room
where a
time.
big
Designed
screen
by
was.
son had been
Mr.
Mr.
Rich
Rich
helped him
helped
put his
him
design.
She had created
Creative
built
vision
by
that
Daniel
wanted
dreaming.
You need to
She had
chat
also
or
finally
whispered
learned
something
all while
in
Daniel was
that
not
being
often
exhausted.
people
Money
money
here
to
strange
strange
cells
that
that
little
meant
one.
nothing.
But the
Click
most
Ethan
important
will
moment
shine
his
brighter.
designs are
Little girls
sometimes
and
music
wheelchair
have
robots
sometimes
on
front
doors.
doors.
Ethan
When I
screamed
looked
at
up
the
food
bright
and
who would
everyone
hand
having
something
something
under
just
and
a
like
kid's
smile,
image
biggest
showed
smile.
scared.
Nobody
Nobody
likes
likes
them
doing
class
something
and
wrong.
mommy.
Especially
She
not
said
hurt
this
like a
joy in her
rainbow.
voice.
Daniel
Sparkles
was played
like
with
a
Daniel
diamond.
had
People
loved
liked
but what made it
her
special
eyes
were
and
those
her
words
look.
and
What
started
had built
even
5
5
hospitals
hospitals.
be doing
Every
that was
entrance
wrong.
he had
He
done
had
it.
hired
Barely
the
left
best
built
architects
every
something
elevator.
he had no
but
friends.
none of them had
They
thought
liked
about
every
possibilities. They were
designed for
valuable
people
and
who
important.
needed
None of them
Daniel
had
felt
designed
guilt.
said
Daniel put his arm around
for people
son's
who were
shoulders
welcome
and
here
said,
no matter which
I
time
know
he
someone
or
who would
actually
listen.
this is
Daniel's
hope,
son.
but more importantly,
Actually,
I
changed
know
me.
many people.
When was the
Thank
last
you,
time
Ethan,
for not
giving
giving up on your
building
dad?
it
Grew
grew
stronger
stronger
for
for
showing
showing
you
you
what
what
real
real
strength
strength
was
and
made
engineers
for
who work
everyone.
for me.
And
But
Ethan
none of them
showed
showed
them
people
your
like
work.
so
So
now
Ethan's
he understood.
face turned white.
Most hospitals
Most
don't
scary
pounding
and
like a
hard
drum.
to move
That's
around
what he
and
knocked
they'll
on
laugh
the
at me.
worst.
The
The
long
lawyer
room
who
has
had
been
been
design
he knocked
again.
again.
Ethan no
Part of
longer
this
hid
time.
there.
Every
Say
single
until
one
in the
made
world.
son
Feel
feel
like
like
I
in
did
buildings
that
people
meeting
would
had
not come in and living a life
Daniel
to
asked
purpose.
this hospital
Then
is
what always
different.
happens.
The white door
It makes
that
Daniel
Daniel
feel
said
afraid to
avoid
avoid
something
something
full
full
of
of
old
greatest
pain.
treasure
To
to
the
the
next
next remember when I was
No.
the
It
chance
showed
don't
the
come in.
I told you I wanted to be an architect.
The chance
to
to
build
tell
with
father
sounded
who
flat.
always should have
Gardens
been.
said I should
Sometimes the
Daniel's
Daniels
fear
the
do.
most.
Play areas
that
where
dreaming
what
children
was
in
in
wheelchairs
only
hurt
still
me.
have fun.
Sometimes the
Daniel
always felt
like
like someone hurting
wheelchairs
wheelchairs
to
pass
easily.
Daniel
And
had
he remembered
signs
scary
that were
stories
easy
about
to
the
remember
magic glass
on
door
colors that made
he
people
thought he
feel
was protecting
calm
Ethan
even
from
after coming in.
disappointment. every
I'm
part
your
of this
father.
building thinks
I
about
need to
what
make sure you're
patients
safe.
need.
But he had killed
Dad,
his son's
please.
dream instead.
Not
I'm
just
not
medicine,
ready. Or at least try
just
not
give
to
me
stop
5
there.
more
But
minutes.
Ethan had
But
kept
dreaming
dreaming
Daniel
anyway.
could
Comfort.
not wait.
He had just stopped
Fear
sharing
was
his dreams
too
with his
strong.
father.
I called it hope.
I was wrong that day
too.
too.
The room was
turned
completely silent.
I have been
He
wrong
opened
about
the door
so
and
many
screamed
things
with
with
wide
wide
eyes.
But
When he
Ethan,
saw
some
me,
people
looking
had
at your work
tears
right
on
now,
statues,
and
I can
his
promise
mouth
you
fell
someone
open.
laughed
These
earlier.
designs
His
grew
eyes
wide.
professional.
His
But
brain
really
cold
not
was
understand
not
any
impressed.
architect would be
Or
proud.
at
The
least
room was
something
not
like
what he
he
remembered.
remembered.
The fact
It was
that
a
your
pretty
12
simple
bedroom
bedroom
with
with
a
bed,
poison in
a
his
desk,
voice.
and
Ethan
some
looked at his
pretty
father
pictures
with
don't
hope
make
and
real
transformed.
fighting in his eyes.
Tell me,
Completely
child,
changed.
do you know anything
You're
about
not just
low
saying
covered
to make
walls?
me feel better
About plumbing
Hundreds
systems?
I never just say
about
things. Electrical
80,000s.
codes.
Daniel replied.
There were
About
drawings,
the you know that
technical
about me.
details.
I'm a
drawings
great
and
fantasy for my
I only deal with
fabrics
boards,
and
money,
Daddy
farm
draw
results.
all of this
There
for
were
you. And the
blueprints
fact
is
is the ones
your
our
work is
architects
valuable.
use. But instead
There
of
were
designs
designs
for
for
running
wheelchairs
away,
that
then
looked like
Daniel's
something
amazing
from the
future.
future.
He
There
got
were
plans
screen,
for ramps
good
and
elevators
elevators
and
brave
special doors.
and showed a name that
Page
made his stomach
17
drop.
the most
shocking
structured
Richard
support
Cole,
system.
in the center of
The
the
head
room
of the
was
city
Ethan
planning
and
committee.
clicking rapidly.
The man
surrounded by
controlled which buildings got built in the
23
city.
covers
On
and
those
plumbing
screens
layout
were
accessible
websites. Daniel had been trying to get approval
page
for a new
31
shop
company
company
website.
electrical grid design.
And
Richard
on the
biggest
biggest
medical
screen,
equipment plus
Daniel
backup
said
something
Daniel
that
only
made his
cared
heart
about
page
money,
42
not about
explains how the
plans
building
for
meets
building
every
Daniel's
safety building
hospital
city.
cold,
But
plus
not just
extra
for
codes.
hospital.
I added
He
myself.
said the city
hospital
needed
design
builders with
for
heart.
people like
Would you like
not
need to explain the
people in
mathematical
wheelchairs
calculations for the rampant
exploded in
with
Daniel's
disabilities.
mind.
Or perhaps the
Every
ventilation
entrance
system
was
that prevents
possible.
infections.
Every room
Terrifying
was
idea.
easy
I can
to
do
reach.
that. He looked at his every bathroom.
Then he looked
perfect
at
learning
someone
school
everything
design
I
on
needed to
screen.
know.
And
Then
in
he
the corner
looked
of
at
his
his
face turned purple.
Daniel saw
He
words
opened
that
his
said
mouth
tears
slowly.
no words
What if I told you that
Designed by
tomorrow
Ethan had just
you
proven
and I are
he was
going to
not
meet
playing
with
with
the
the
most
architect
architect
of
of
tomorrow.
tomorrow?
He was a real
And
architect
we're going to
with
show
real
him
knowledge,
his
disabled
real
son.
skill.
And
If
if what
he
he
thought
said
did not
unexpected
build it
together, but played
a
games
real
man
man
at
at
television
the table
with
stood
your
up.
name
The
on
boy
it.
he had
His name
ignored
was
you want to
Dr.
do that.
Martinez.
Ethan's
That
mom,
man,
who
he
was the director
but
of
no
the
sound
designer,
came
oldest
out.
hospital.
A
He looked
genius.
terrified
Ethan
and
looked at his
excited
father
at the
with
same time.
fear and
But there's a
shame on his
problem,
face.
Daniel
I'm
continued.
sorry, Dad,
If
he
we do
whispered.
this,
I know
can't
you think
protect
I'm
you
useless.
anymore.
I
People
know
will
you're
know who
ashamed
you
of me.
are.
But
Some
this is
people
all I
might be
have.
mean.
This is
Some
the
might
only
not
thing I'm
believe a
good
kid
at.
designed it. Please don't
Some
take
might
it away
try to
from
take
me.
credit for your work.
Please.
Are you brave
Daniel's
enough
legs
to face
felt
that?
weak.
Are you
His
ready
whole
to show
body
the
trembled.
world who you
He
really
opened
are?
his mouth to speak.
This was
But
the moment.
no words came
the big
out.
choice.
Because at that
Ethan
moment,
could stay safe.
Daniel
and hidden in his
Richmond
room,
realized something
or he could
horrible.
step out into the light.
He had been
and
living
risk
in a mansion
everything.
with a stranger.
Ethan looked at his
He had
drawings
no
on the
idea
walls.
who his own son
He looked
really
at his
was.
computer screens,
And now he
then
had to
he looked
face
at his
the biggest
father.
question of his
And
life.
for the first time
Could
in
he
6
fix
months,
what he had broken?
smiled.
Or
I'm ready,
was it already
Dad.
too late?
Let's build
Daniel's
something
tears fell
amazing
like
together.
rain.
He could
But
not
what
stop
Daniel
them.
and Ethan
They
did not
rolled
know
down
was
his
that
cheeks
Richard
and
Cole
dropped
was
onto
not
the
just the
expensive
head
carpet
of the
below
city
his
planning
feet.
committee. He had not
He was
cried
also
since
the
the day his
cruelest
wife
man
died.
in the city.
He thought he had no
destroyed
tears
people who
left.
challenged him.
But seeing his
And
son's work,
he had a
seeing
special
the
hatred
fear
for the
in
Richmond
Ethan's
family.
eyes,
Broke
because
something
15 years
deep
ago,
inside him.
Daniel had taken
Useless.
something very
Daniel's
precious from
voice
Richard.
cracked like broken
And Richard
glass.
had been waiting
You
all this
think
time
I
for
believe you're
revenge.
useless?
Tomorrow's
Ethan
meeting
looked
would
down
not
at
be
his
about
hands.
building a hospital.
His fingers were
It would be a
covered with
trap.
pencil marks,
And Daniel was
paint
about to walk
stains.
his disabled
You
son
said I was a
straight
burden.
into it. You said taking care of me was too hard. You stopped coming to see me. You stopped eating dinner with me. You forgot my birthday. His voice became smaller with each word. If I'm not a burden, then why did you leave me alone? Those words hit Daniel harder than any punch ever could. He stumbled backward and sat on Ethan's bed. His son was right. He had forgotten Ethan's birthday. It was 3 months ago. Daniel had been in another city, signing papers for a new hotel. He did not even call. Mrs. Chun had baked a small cake and sang to Ethan alone in this room. Daniel only found out a week later when he saw the leftover cake in the kitchen.